welcome back to the Ink Sink. I am Annie.
I'm Kaylee.
And we are not here this week. Sorry, everybody.
Rip.
But we're going to be talking about Frankenstein. Or not Frankenstein. We're going to be giving you something that is a patchwork of not body parts, episode segments from other episodes.
Got 'em.
Stuff from the cutting room floor. Okay, Kaylee, this story came from The Guardian, and I wanted to start us off. Just give us like a hard level of depression moving into this episode.
Oh yeah, no, today was, this week was rough. Last week was rough, I guess.
It's been hard. So, The Guardian reports that an AI has found that male-coded characters are 4 times more common in literature than female-coded characters, which is...
In this article was so interesting because it's spanning a variety of genres, and I was like, okay, and then including romance novels, and I'm saying, wait, what? So the genre specifically targeted towards women. Okay. It doesn't even have like a 1-to-1 ratio here. Like, cool.
It's insane. And just as a quick reminder, about 50% of the human population is female. So this isn't a matter of like, oh, well, it's not close. It's not close at all to what the actual representation is. I don't have any like solutions for this, but it was pretty crazy to me that this is real. My thought is that maybe going forward, like a year by year thing, we will maybe be able to see that it's getting better. But I think that one of the main issues, and one of the kickoffs for the Own Voices movement, which we talked about in a previous episode, is that there is so little representation for women. And we can talk all we want about underrepresented groups, but women are half of the population. And if we can't even have representation for that, what hope is there for underrepresented groups?
Yep. No, it was really depressing, like, to have that kind of laid out in numbers.
So the way that this study worked, if you were interested, listeners, which hopefully you are because you're listening to us. Basically, the study worked by analyzing pronouns that were used in works and tallying how many different instances of those pronouns showed up in the main characters for literature. Mm-hmm. And they tallied up the he's and the she's, and there were a couple of theys, but they kind of set those to the side. And they found that people who were coded male, using the he, him pronouns, were 4 times more common than people who were coded female using she, her pronouns.
And this included adventure, science fiction, mystery, and romance was the fiction genres that were surveyed.
And we've talked about before how important fiction is and can be for people seeing themselves, and
representation matters.
It does. We've talked about Own Voices before, and we've also talked about on the podcast before about how if you are a woman or a person of color in the publishing industry and you want advertising for your book or your upcoming work, we will absolutely give you free advertising. Just let us know what it is. We have a built-in break into this podcast. We have a standing offer for free advertising for any women and people of color. And
again, this is just not, we're not getting money for it. We're just doing it. We're just promoting people.
We get no money for this show.
Yeah, just to be very clear, this is a labor of love.
Because we love each other and books.
All of the above.
Moving on. This came from Press Gazette. This is a deep dive on the current state of Facebook and Google's news partnerships. This was really helpful for me to kind of contextualize what's going on.
It was such an interesting look at big business playing chicken right now, is what it feels like, which is, it's just, considering what people use Facebook for, I don't know, like, it feels like you're aiming an unloaded gun at this point, trying to say that you're going to back off. But they might just back off and, like, not allow, like, news to come in directly. Which, Annie, I'm sorry, tell us more about what's going on. What are the current moves before I start getting into discussing the implications?
Yeah, so right now, the way that Facebook and Google news partnerships currently work. So we've talked a lot about how there are countries that are trying to legislate and force Facebook and Google to pay for news. That is not to say that Facebook and Google do not currently pay for news. They do, but it is a very piecemeal, working directly with individual news creators. So Facebook has a deal with, for example, just using the New York Times. Facebook has a deal with them where the New York Times is able to post their content on Facebook with some tools that Facebook makes available just to content creators. Facebook also supports them through payments and news labs. News labs you would probably have a lot more information on this. It's like when a developer works with a content creator to create tools and apps that work with the actual content itself.
Yeah, it's a way to kind of format and integrate and then disperse very easily so it's like basically you post to a hub and then the hub connects to other people, and the format that your content is generated in makes it easy to consume at those other locations, and so those tools coming together.
Yeah, it's sort of like if you've ever been on Facebook, or actually, you know what, another one that does this a lot is Robinhood, where you click on it and it doesn't take you out to that newspaper's website. You just open it in the actual app and you read it from there, and there's no paywall or anything like that. So Facebook and Google are paying to have those functionalities in their systems, but they don't want to be forced to have those functionalities in their systems. And as Kaylee said,
they don't want to have some sort of structured payment system. That way they can pay, kind of pulling like a rideshare sort of deal where they're paying real good prices for the first, say, year, and then...
Yes. So as Kaylee is going to elaborate further on, they have deals going out about 3 years, and a lot of industry analysts believe that a lot of it is just them, you know, kind of being able to have these deals in place so that they can go to legislators and say, oh, see, we're already doing all of this. And what they use as proof is the fact that
this initial temporary agreement that has no bearing past October currently, like, just to be clear. Like, there are many organizations that are like, we're probably not going to get renewed, or the terms won't be as agreeable. Like, we're pretty sure based on what we're seeing and based on just historical trends. And that's fair because capitalism.
So why don't you talk to us about the implications, Kaylee?
Okay, so just knowing how my family works with social media, which is part of the reason I ran from social media and I don't go on social media.
I think a lot of people have that experience.
But, I mean, yeah, people, they want to not have to go to multiple sources to get access to your content. You want it in a location. And
you want a frictionless experience.
Exactly. Like, and that's fair. So right now, and people go to Facebook. They go to Facebook to get their news, which for better and worse. Some content sources are better than others. The suggestion here is that Facebook is internally discussing removing these tools and making it either harder or impossible to get access to the news via Facebook, and focusing on community-based news. Like, what that means, means what, you're not going to pay the local news sources? What kind of trash are you talking about? Like, right now, that doesn't mean anything. Either it means that you're going to undercut locally, which is even worse, or it means that you are just saying words that don't actually have any weight behind them. Like, it's absurd. And the fact that they're already proving that if countries are not careful with the way that it went down in Australia, like, it worked. They had agreements, and so they weren't designated as one of the sources that had to have an official agreement. Yeah. That was then regulated. Like, it worked. So they could do
this strategy of these, like, halfway contracts worked in Australia. So,
and that's why, like, in Canada and like in other countries and looking at in the US, they're looking to be more formal. Like, we're currently watching how the things are playing out in Canada right now, because they're wanting a much more transparent, reasonably so. As somebody that is aggressively transparent on my tech team, it's a little frustrating sometimes, but it is just better for everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, once you establish a regulation for something, you should be following it.
Yes.
I feel. I mean, maybe I'm crazy.
Oh God, I know, right? Like, what a wild concept. Penguin Random House is bringing their licensed content under one imprint to both centralize and make it easier to negotiate and distribute the media, which I think is actually very smart. As somebody that has to talk to 17 different groups to get anything done, if we could do that at work, I would throw a parade. It would be great. So Godspeed.
Yeah, I actually thought this was a really good idea, but then I thought a little bit more about it, and I wonder how logistically they're going to make it work on the back or on the front end, because I can't imagine that all of this licensed content wants to be branded the same way. So my thought is, does the, Star Wars licensed content want to have the same logo on the back of the cover as the Disney parks branded content? I mean, I'm sure it's fine. Obviously, they probably talked about it with these people. So what's going on is...
Amy, what's going on?
For those who don't know, so in publishing, if you're publishing a book, say, really all that you need to do is go, if you plan on publishing with a publisher, you go to that publisher, you sign a contract with them, and then they handle everything else. So they just sign a contract with you. They have their editing, their advertising stuff all happening in-house. But when you're talking about licensed content, meaning like if someone wrote a novelization about Star Wars, the publisher is not just signing a contract with the author. They're signing a contract with
the IP holder.
The IP holders, plural. They're also signing contracts with other business interests who are involved in the advertising of that. Disney Disney wants a hand. Disney famously micromanages the advertising of all of its brands.
Infamously, let's be clear. Infamously. Not famously. Infamously.
So it has to go in and sign contracts with Disney as well, if it's just on the advertising or just on the editorial. A lot of people want to make sure that they get to see the final product before it goes out, so Penguin Random House has to sign contracts with those people to make sure that they get things done in an orderly time and that any changes that they make are within certain parameters. So there's actually a lot that goes in to licensed content, a lot more than your average book. So it makes total sense that to want to streamline that and to just focus those resources in one office, you know, just so that like you have like one person to yell at if you want to.
Not just that, but like you can also, it's very helpful, especially like when you're understanding the context for the history of the contracts. And when you going through one location, you can centralize access to the records.
Absolutely. Oh, good point. I didn't even think about that.
It's very difficult when you've got 7 different lawyers or project managers, perhaps, which is likely, to working on all of these different like lines. Yeah. And you'll have different quirks within given contracts that you don't know how to work with or work around or whatever. Like it's hard. Like it's very hard. So,
and when it's a given series and you want to make sure there are commonalities in that series.
Consistency is so helpful, guys. Like just
apparently they were doing it title by title before, which I can only imagine was like internally like the editors who like had to deal with that every now and then were like, kill me.
Yeah, no, Godspeed. Like I can understand why we ended up here. And if nothing else, like knowing your point of contacts when it's centralized is it saves so much time and effort and energy and frustration.
Absolutely.
If nothing else.
Yeah, from an administration perspective, I think this is probably a very, very good idea. There are a lot of pros to this and very few cons.
And I think that as long as they're approaching it intelligently, which I hope that they are, they seem like they are.
The RH knows its business.
Yeah.
Whatever the P stands for, they know what they're doing.
We're not getting tripped up again. Can't catch us this time.
PRH, that's what it's called. I wanted to end this section on something that actually made me laugh, which is, first of all, Margaret Atwood is a G.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know about the phenomenon of The Handmaid's Tale, she wrote this book about a essentially gender dystopia where women are essentially enslaved. They aren't allowed to do anything. They aren't even allowed to read. And
they just pop out babies. If they have the ability to pop out babies, that's what they do.
They are ritually raped. And it's a horrible, horrible thing. So, Margaret Atwood.
God, what amazing, what a woman.
Why don't you tell us what she did?
She worked with an auction house or with a group and got a book of The Handmaid's Tale, which again is one of the most frequently banned books in the country of the United States of America. She got that published on fire-retardant materials.
So you literally cannot set that book on fire. You cannot ban that book.
Like, you can't do it.
Get him, Margaret Atwood. She's
right.
such a... If you've ever listened to her talk about what inspired her for The Handmaid's Tale, every single piece of that culture, she said, exists in modern society.
I did
somewhere
know that,
in the
yes.
world.
I did know that, yes.
If you haven't read The Handmaid's Tale, it is... I think we've talked about this before. One of the books that got me back into reading after I got burned out on it in my undergrad. And it's one of those things where you read it and you realize the utter intensity of feeling that can be conveyed through fiction. And it is so important, I think, for some people to understand that that exists. But if you are a survivor of sexual assault or gendered violence, it can be very triggering. So I don't recommend it for everyone. But apparently the show on Hulu goes even further. The Handmaid's Tale is quite limited in its timeline. Apparently the show on Hulu, I don't know if you've watched it, Kaylee. So apparently the show on Hulu follows Offred, and she joins the resistance and comes back and liberates all the handmaids.
Fucking good.
Yes. We are now on to celebrating women and people of color in publishing. Do you want to jump in for the new editor-in-chief at Slate, Kaylee?
Ooh, yeah. Let me get that back up because I want to make sure I'm getting her name right.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Hilary Frey. Like, not a weird pronunciation, extra letters.
I mean, we're going to find out that it is.
I'm sure. It's pronounced Frey.
It's pronounced Sorry, Hillary. Sorry.
The R is silent. I've never heard that in my whole life, but that would be like the funniest thing.
Listen.
Anyway, Hillary Frey is going to be taking on the editor-in-chief position at Slate. So Dan Check announced that. So good for her.
Mm-hmm.
Jared Holt had, I assume I'm pronouncing that correctly, stepped down after 3 years on the job. She's pretty impressive. I think she's worked for them before as an executive editor. And so she's familiar with the company. She's familiar with news. This is going to be so interesting to see her kind of bring her wheelhouse into play here with Slate.
Yeah, Slate, I think, is one of those really good magazines that I think, again, unflinchingly stares at a lot of topics that a lot of other places don't necessarily. So that is a big ship to steer, and congratulations to Hillary Frey for being able to do that. And now for our favorite section. Kaylee, what are you reading?
So I have been going through and rereading the Percy Jackson series I had told you last time. So I am on the second set of books.
It's different pantheons, right? As the sets are focusing on
He does have other pantheons.
Okay.
That's true. So he started with focused on the Greek, and then it was the Romans, which were a schism, sort of not, I don't want to say split personality because it's not a thing per se, but it was kind of that for Greek and Romans because there was a war and like it was a thing. But in the books, yeah. Okay. And then he started splitting out and branching out into other pantheons. So yes, even in the Roman ones, he started bringing in other, like, because obviously Rome in general acquired religions.
It did.
Yeah, consumed them a little bit. And it's just how
I think that's an accurate word,
yeah. Yeah, and then the same thing, I mean, and then it acquired Christianity, and Christianity came from the inside out. Anyway, so yeah, the overall, like, nature of the books, fun story, as told you before, but the author, Rick Riordan, got kind of, maybe he had a time to conceptualize his original stories a lot more and put a lot more thought into them as far as it goes, and that he did not have the time for the second set of novels. He was trying different things too, different POV switches, and he was trying to give attention to other characters in such a way that it felt like he was trying to be thoughtful but didn't have the time, which he didn't realize until later was really needed to develop them fully, just even for himself, perhaps. And he hadn't really put a lot of thought into kind of how some things would come off for readers, or young readers especially. Mm-hmm. And you can just really see him, like, growing as an author. But yeah, so Annie, what are you reading?
I'm not reading anything right now.
Girl,
I actually haven't been reading for a bit. I've been working, as I said, working a lot, so it's been just a lot of stress. I have instead been playing Mass Effect. I am so close to having platinumed that entire series.
You're doing great.
I am one trophy away from...
What's the trophy?
So there is a... Sorry, everybody, we're talking about video games on this reading podcast.
Hey, look, you know what? I feel like there is something to be said for a mythos that...
I love the lore of Mass Effect.
Exactly.
It's so much... As I'm playing it, I'm like, I would love to write a story like this. Like, it's so sweeping and very cool. So, for those of you who don't know, we'll talk about plot. Mass Effect is a sci-fi story about a space marine, basically, who is embroiled in this weird political thriller, and also a zombie apocalypse, and also a invasion of the AI. Somehow all of that is coexisting in one universe, and it is so good.
They do a good job weaving everything together.
They do a really good job. So I am on the third one, which is the big climax of the thing. The big AI aliens have taken over Earth and flooded it with these zombie monsters. But they also have, this universe has a bunch of aliens in it, so they're also flooding them with alien zombies, and they're freaking terrifying. And one of the final missions is a DLC. It's a lot of fan service in this DLC. There's like, you fight your clone, and all of your friends from previous games show back up, and
you got a party.
One girl saves the galaxy with a toothbrush. Like, it's a whole thing. Yeah, and you have a party. But one thing they also have is a combat sim, and you can grab like licenses for all your old friends, and at that point you essentially have to do the hardest fight in the combat sim to get this trophy. And I just have been putting it off because there's an unskippable mission right before that where you have all of your advantages taken away. You don't have armor, you don't have any of your friends with you, and you can only use this one specific type of gun to get through this mission. So I've been spending time trying to upgrade that gun before I get to it. Fair. So that it goes much more fast. It sucked.
That sounds terrible, frankly. Holy shit. You were playing like a stealth character too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And she didn't have her armor.
I think I've done soldier and I've done wizard, basically. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. Soldier is, I would say, the easiest on normal. The magic one, I think it's called adept.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I've beaten all 3 of the games on insanity. And I've gotten all 3 of the romance achievements. I've hijacked all the mechs. I have upgraded all the guns and all the armor and all of my ship things and defeated all of the enemies. But now I just have to go through and do a combat sim on the hardest level. Now I'm back playing it on normal. I'm playing it on normal difficulty because I don't have to be on a specific difficulty to get to the combat sim. Okay. But to get to the combat sim, you have to go through most of the game first for it to trigger. So now I'm just upgrading this gun endlessly. It's the worst. Anyways, but yeah, so Mass Effect, one of my favorite games of all time. I have all of the achievements for 1, 2, and 3, and also all of the legendary specific achievements. And I have just this one trophy left, and then I will have quadruple platinumed this series.
Yeah, girl.
And then I never have to think about it ever again.
Which you will anyway. Let's be real. That's fair.
I love these games. Thanks for listening. I'm Annie.
I'm Kaylee.
You can follow The Ink Sync on Twitter, Instagram, Bookshop, or you can email us at theinksyncpodcast@gmail.com. We do want to hear your ideas. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Just make faces
do
at
it.
each other the whole time. It'll be fine.
Perfect. We'll definitely be very professional.
What could possibly go wrong?
This is only going to improve things.